Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce RTX 4080 Super in Horizon Forbidden West. This one is the Founders Edition model of the card. We are running it with the latest Nvidia drivers and I'm not manually overclocking it. You can see all of its specs here in Tech Power-Ups. GPU 0 accessible bar is enabled and we got 16GB of GDDR6X to work with. And over on the left, we're pairing it with a Ryzen 9 7950X3D with half of its cores disabled, so we're only utilizing the 3D cache cores. I get asked very often why I do this, and it's because I want to make sure that the games are running on the 3D cache core. Some games won't really do that, and you lose performance that way. Finally, on the memory tab, we're using 32GB of DDR5 6000MHz RAM in dual channel, and let's get right into it, shall we? Alright, here we have it, guys. Let's go over the settings first. I'm starting at 1080p using DLAA, and the highest settings over here, aside from motion blur, vignette, and chromatic aberration. And I'm also going to test this at 1440p, 4K, and 8K resolutions. Alright, let's start counting our FPS with and without DLSS, by the way. Now, DLAA does look quite a bit better than the TAA implementation that they got going on in this game. I already tried it using TAA with the 3060 in yesterday's video, in the minimum and recommended requirements of this game. Check it out if you haven't already. And although the TAA implementation in this game is quite decent, it's a little bit over-sharpened, and I feel like DLAA looks a little bit better. And it seems like it's performing around the same as well. By the way, this is one of the most intensive areas in the game, at least so far. I played for about like an hour. I played through the first few missions completely. There was an area that was a bit more intensive and it dropped a little bit to these values that we're seeing right here, but most of the time it was getting like 10, 15, 20 more frames per second. But well, let's fight these bastards right here. The bobs, yes, robobs. These are robobs, not robots. Okay, there we go. It seems like it drops slightly into like the lower 120s sometimes. I've seen it dip down to like 110, 115 frames per second already because I actually started making this video and I didn't really record it. I didn't notice that I wasn't recording, so the 1080p section, I'm just repeating it, okay? So now we're seeing a lot of NPCs on screen, a lot more buildings and stuff like that, and it's still getting around the same FPS as out there, guys. Doesn't really change by too much, which is quite nice to see as well. The game is really well optimized, actually, from what I'm seeing here. It actually looks insanely good. Like, there's no blurriness to the image, which is very nice, and the water looks awesome as well. Wow. I didn't expect this because most recent titles are super blurry, you know, at 1080p resolution, but not this one. Even on my 42-inch monitor, it's definitely super passable. And speaking of 1440p, I'm not going to do like DLSS and frame generation here at 1080p res because there's no point really, but I'm going to try 1440p now using DLAA still. And you know what? I'm kind of curious actually. Using DLAA, we're getting 106 frames per second right here, right around that. And I want to see it using TAA. I want to see if there's a big difference between using TAA and DLAA. In some games like Cyberpunk, there is a huge difference, actually. So here we go. TAA gets us like 5 more FPS. 4 to 5 more FPS. It's not really that big of a deal, so I definitely choose to play with DLAA. It's also a bit noisy using TAA, and it gets rid of the noise when you use DLAA, and this is looking absolutely fantastic. Holy crap, it's so detailed. When you're swimming, you can see the water ripples around you. They're pretty good looking as well. Look at that. Damn, it makes me want to go there in real life, you know? It looks very vibrant as well. It's beautiful, guys. Also, the lens flares in this game. They are very, very good looking as well. I guess around like 100 FPS average is what you can expect at 1440p max settings in this game. If you want more FPS, you could use some DLSS, which I'm sure will look great here at 1440p. You could also utilize the very high settings preset instead of the maximum settings preset. I'm sure that will bump the FPS by quite a bit as well. But yeah, there's no need, in my opinion, because this is a single-player title. You don't need super fast reactions, and it will work just fine with 60 plus FPS, and this is essentially getting like 90 plus FPS, so it's very, very smooth indeed, and the kind of experience that you'd want coming from such an expensive GPU, honestly. Maybe, you know, if you're paying $1,000, god damn it, for a GPU, you might even want better than this. But remember, it's maximum settings. Okay, 120s right here. I'm also just exploring this area, you know. Let me just bring up the map. Yep, there's the big area right here, open world as well. It's good for benchmarking, and I rected the averages there because I went into the menu. You know what? I'm gonna kill that one, but first, I want to stand right here. We're getting 99, 100 FPS, tons of particle effects. Look at how much alive this looks. That's so pretty. And there's a little bug as well in front of the camera. Amazing, amazing. The bug was detailed as well. So we were getting like 99 FPS right here, right? So I'm gonna enable the frame generation now. And with frame generation on top of DLAA, look at this. I can tell it might be a little bit softer than it was before, but since the game is actually quite sharp at native resolution, unlike other titles out there, it's not a problem, in my opinion. This looks almost the same as native resolution, guys. It's really, really close. There might be some imperfections coming from frame generation. I'm trying to see if I can spot any artifacting, but we're at 120 FPS now. And on like a high refresh rate monitor, you might be able to tell the difference between 100 and 125 FPS, which is the difference from frame generation enabled. In terms of input lag, it's very similar. I might be able to notice it a little bit, but it's not really the end of the world. It's above 100 FPS, and frame generation above 100 FPS feels really good. Look at that. What? A raccoon. My friends, there's a raccoon, and we can see his fur and everything, and it looks great. Oh my goodness. I didn't even know. Is there a Jack in this game, by the way? Maybe Jack's a robot. Probably. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. How did I... Yes, it's like this. Okay, there we go. Yep. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. I prefer the slow motion. Okay. Wait a second. We should be fine. I crafted some arrows. Let's get this over with. Good stuff. Also, the frame time might be a little bit less thick than it was before with frame generation, actually. That's something that I found FG to do pretty well. It's making that frame time graph even more stable. It's super noticeable, for example, in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It flattens the frame time graph by quite a bit, and I find it to be kind of the same here, but it could also be because the FPS are just higher overall. But I think if you compare this frame time graph that we're getting here, aside from those little spikes, which are not noticeable, by the way, it is a little bit flatter. It's like more of a line than it was at 1080p without the frame generation and with the same FPS, more or less. So let's stop it there. Look at how close the 1% lows are to the averages. This is great. So far, 2024 has been better in terms of game optimization than freaking 2023, guys. For some reason, like, we got this game, which is buttery smooth and looks absolutely amazing. We got Helldivers 2, which is buttery smooth and doesn't look absolutely amazing, but okay, I will take the optimization, you know. This is probably how I'd end up playing this game. Either like this or native resolution with DLAA with a 4080 Super at 1440p. Again, there is no need to utilize upscaling here, but if you want it, let's try it on quality. We're getting around the same FPS, I guess, maybe slightly higher than with FG enabled on top of DLAA, but the game now kind of looks like TAA is enabled, guys. Because, can you stop, please? Can you God damn it. Okay, I'm fine. But yeah, it kind of looks like TAA is enabled because it's a bit over-sharpened now. Detail is still there, though, which is very impressive because this is upscaling from 900-ish p resolution, or actually, is it 892p? I think it's 892p when DLSS is set to quality at 1440, and obviously it looks a lot better than that resolution. It also looks better than some other games out there at even native resolution in 1440p, so there's that. But what is wrong with my skirt thingy? What the hell? It's glitching out. That's so weird. Thankfully, we're not using frame generation, because otherwise I would think it was because of frame generation. Standing right here, which is where we standed previously, it's actually getting exactly the same FPS as FG with the DLAA. So that's what I'd go for if you're not happy with the native resolution FPS, and if you are happy with the native resolution FPS, just use DLAA on native, and it looks fantastic, and it still performs really damn well. Okay, moving on to 2160p or 4K resolution using DLAA as well, no frame generation or DLSS yet, and still using the max settings. Wow. I mean, Jesus, there's so much detail in this game. It is really gorgeous. I mean, it doesn't look very close to real life, you know, it's not super realistic, but it looks absolutely gorgeous with that lighting on the trees and stuff, the shadowy areas. Wow. It's lovely, and it's still above 60 FPS as well. Where is the other machine? There was a robot right here, right? I think so. Maybe just left. Hello, little guy. How's it going? I'm not gonna kill you. Like, the world is ridden with freaking robots. Wow, look at this. Look at the detail. A faraway detail as well. I can see that bridge over there. The trees at the distance are still moving with the wind. And I can see the little leaves as well. Well, not really the little leaves. We'll get there at 8K, by the way. But yeah, I can see that there's something there, right? It's awesome. And on top of all of this, with this great draw distance and everything, it actually isn't even losing FPS. That is, again, really well optimized, guys. I love it. Maybe it should have been playable or more playable on like GTX 1650s and stuff like that, but the game just looks really, really good. Even on the lowest settings, it's very impressive, and it has a ton of detail. Okay, 1% lows are already in the 50s now. Alright, this is probably where the RTX 4080 Super will start to struggle a little bit. Okay, water effects, still not dropping from 60. Oh, there we go, 58. Okay, so it will have some areas, and especially like in boss fights and stuff like that. Although I have already completed a boss fight and it wasn't more intensive than this area. So there's that. But yeah, if you come across a boss fight in an intensive area, for example, it will probably dip down into the low 50s at times. And that's a bit underwhelming for a $1,000 GPU, but at the same time, the game looks so good that I will forgive it. Okay, guys? Again, you can just lower down the graphical fidelity a little bit if you want 60 plus 100% of the time, or utilize DLSS, which I am sure will look great at 4K resolution, because usually at 4K it looks pretty much the same as the native stuff. And also, you know what? Maybe just disabling DLAA will be enough for us to get 60 plus FPS all of the time. Now that I think of it, it only dropped to like 58 or so. So yeah, just disable anti-aliasing. This is now, yeah, it's really sharp, but you get a lot of shimmering. And we're getting like 73 frames per second. And let's see, TAA here. Kind of the same FPS as anti-aliasing off, right? We only lost like 2 frames per second. You know what? 70 FPS or 71 is what we get here with TAA. And with DLAA, we get 68. 3 FPS difference. You know what? I'd just pick DLAA, honestly. Even if it dips down to like 58 sometimes. Maybe overclock the card a little bit. Like 100 megahertz or so, and then it will stay above 60, 100% of the time. At least in this general area right here, of course. Maybe in other areas it will dip down a little bit further, but I've been to a city area already, and I've played through the entire thing first, like the entire first part of the game, or the mission, whatever. And again, it wasn't really as intensive as this. Now let's try frame generation on top of DLAA, because again, at the lower resolutions, this looked pretty much the same as native stuff. And here at 4K, holy crap, it is so gorgeous, and it is actually smooth now. Well, it was just as smooth previously, because I'm using 60 Hz once again, but on a high refresh rate monitor, it will be quite a bit smoother, because it's now 100 frames per second. And yes, you could argue it's not true 100 FPS, because the input lag is a little bit worse now. Since it's still above like 80 frames per second, it's okay. And since it is around like 100 FPS frame generation just feels fine. The input lag feels fine as well. I can tell it's a little bit worse than native 100 FPS, you know, but it's just the same thing as I told you previously. This is a single-player game. I don't really mind a little bit of added input lag. It doesn't really bother me much. It's actually dropping quite a bit right here in the cutscene. Interesting. Look at that. Cutscenes can get pretty intensive, and I actually found that while testing the minimum and recommended requirements, it usually dropped a lot more in cutscenes. Alright, so now I'm gonna get into a little bit of a fight with these guys. Wait a second, I'm actually not gonna kill it right away because I want to see more effects on screen and stuff. Hello? Hello? Boy. Oh boy. Okay. That's what I want to see. Yes, sir. If I die, it's all because of science, okay? And I wanted it. Wait a second. There we go. That one is down. All right. What is happening, by the way? Why aren't the other guys helping me? Maybe I shouldn't have skipped the cutscene. But, you know, you gotta do what you gotta do for the benchmarks. Oh, boy. But yeah, even with all of this happening, it's not dropping, guys. So yeah, I would choose these settings for my own playthrough in this game. And, well, I can leave it right there. But I will still utilize DLSS here, okay? DLSS quality, no frame generation. It should get around the same FPS as what we saw here with frame generation. That's what we saw as well at 1440p. So things should be very much the same in terms of FPS here at 4K. But in terms of visuals, if you actually like a little bit of a sharper look, an over-sharpened look, you could say as well, this is a little bit over-sharpened compared to just DLAA at native resolution. It's interesting. Usually frame generation on top of native res doesn't look as good as DLSS quality at 4K resolution, but in this title, well, FG on top of native res with DLAA looks better than DLSS quality, in my opinion. It's a minor difference, guys, and I doubt you can actually even tell the difference if you have like a 28-inch or 27-inch or even 32-inch monitor. But here on my 42-inch monitor, I can tell this is a bit over-sharpened, and it's not I don't like the look of it, it's just that I prefer the look of native res with FG on. Now, what if I use frame generation on top of DLSS? Will that make it a little bit less sharp? Like, no, I can still see a slightly over-sharpened look, but yeah, I think since FG actually makes the game look a little bit softer than usual, than without FG, you know, and DLSS quality was a little bit over-sharpened, I think FG actually balances it a little bit, and now you can have the best of both worlds. Really good visual quality, which is very, very similar to native resolution, actually, and 100 plus FPS, which is kind of insane. Wow. Damn, I think I would still go for the DLAA plus FG because it looks a little bit better to me. Maybe it's just placebo at this point. This is 4K after all. But I can still see slightly over-sharpened looks sometimes. But yeah, this is a great experience. Actually, every experience that we've had so far in this game has been really, really good with this GPU. Stop it right there. And let's go ahead and do the next step up, my friends. It's gonna be 8K. Without frame generation first. Also, have you taken a look at the VRAM usage? It's also under control. A 12 gig card would be able to play with these settings without maxing out that VRAM buffer. That's another insane thing, because a lot of games these days are super broken and they consume a lot of VRAM. Alright, this is it. It's 4320p resolution, no anti-aliasing right here, or DLSS or frame generation, but still with the highest settings. Wow, it's just like watching a movie at the movies. At the cinema, yes, but the movie at the movies. But yeah, this is actually quite surprising, considering we got 60 FPS plus at 4K resolution. I thought it was gonna struggle a little bit more here with the maximum settings at 8K, but it seems like at 8K maximum settings, the 4080 Super can still handle this game a bit. Although, I'm actually starting to notice a bit of texture popping sometimes. It doesn't happen very often, but I've noticed it, yeah, once or twice already. Right there as well, I saw it again. So maybe the VRAM is just not fast enough to handle 8K at these settings. I don't know. It's certainly not running out of VRAM because it's using 14 gigabytes of it, and we got 16 gigs in this GPU. Another great thing about this game, even at freaking 8K maximum settings, it doesn't utilize 16 gigabytes, which is amazing. A lot of other games do. Now let's try DLSS Performance, which usually looks insanely good at 8K resolution. And indeed, this doesn't disappoint here either. It's actually less sharp or over-sharpened than 4K with quality DLSS, but it is definitely a little bit more detailed than that at the same time. And it's getting 40-ish frames per second. So I guess you don't even need to mess around with settings and presets, you know, if you want to play at 8K with a 4080 Super. This will do. It's 40-ish FPS, yeah, not a great experience. It's much better at 60 FPS, of course, but it's still doable. And it feels great because it's not like frame-generated 40 FPS with a lot of input lag. It's just true 40 FPS, and the input lag is what you should be getting. Reflex is also enabled, so not a problem. It still feels a little bit snappy. I think that's it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what resolution you're playing on if you have an RTX 4080 Super, and what resolution you'd choose for this game if you don't have an RTX 4080 Super. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.